This morning I have the great pleasure of moderating a panel called, Sowing and Growing New Clubs. We have a special guest panel of past International Director Mary Morrison, past International Director Jim Coley, and current Region Advisor Beth Ramsey. We are going to start off with each of them giving their presentations, and then afterwards we will have an open Q&A session. Starting us off, we have Mary Morrison. District 9 Club Growth Advisor Mary Morrison has a long relationship with District 9, beginning when she was District 32 Director and Nancy Shadow was her peer director through her work with district leaders when she served as Region Advisor and then as International Director. She is 200% committed to the success of District 9. Join me in welcoming Mary Morrison as she shares one aspect of growing new clubs. Know your audience. Please help me welcome Mary Morrison.
Thank you, Karen. Welcome, everyone. One of the most powerful district visits I went on occurred in District 9 when Jennifer Zerba was serving as district director, and we had the opportunity to visit a potential club. Well, I didn't do my research on that club, and I'm a potential club, and I'm not certain how much other people did. But there was a turning point in spite of our lack of real knowledge about the club. As we were explaining all about Toastmasters, Jennifer looked to the wall and saw a big sign, big poster with the organization's values on the wall. She jumped up, ran to it, and said, "Look, Toastmasters, 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 Toastmasters," as she went down the list of the values of this organization. And it changed the entire energy of the room. Instead of us trying to convince the organization about all the features of Toastmasters and how much their employees would benefit, Jennifer just slid in with that. We match your values and we're here for you. And before we left that meeting, we had a commitment to form a new club. I say that because before you commit, especially our division directors who said, we'll each do 5 cold calls this year, before you head out on that direction, it's really good to know your audience. Like when you give a speech and you want to know your audience, you really hone your message well. So too, when you are going to make a cold call, you want to know your audience. So I am going to share a few slides with you. I picked, hang on a sec, I cannot multitask enough to do, there you go. I picked Post Falls, Idaho as to model through an example with you. So know your audience. One of the first places to start is with Google. Google Search, Google Maps are fabulous tools. If you have a different search engine you use, I'm sure they will do just as good a job, but either one of those, both your search, word search and your map search do a fabulous job of letting you know the context in which you're operating. Post Falls, Idaho, 45,000 people live in it. There are no Toastmasters clubs. It is kind of between 2 cities, not too far away, Spokane and Coeur d'Alene, which are bigger than Post Falls, but they have almost 18,000 people in their labor force. Their median age is 35. That's pretty young population. They love their recreation and quality of life matters a lot to them. They also have a small business development center that is supported by their city that offers no-cost training for small businesses. So I scroll through the list of things that they offer. A couple mirror things about Toastmasters, but most do not. Wouldn't Toastmasters make a fabulous complement to that kind of service? sometimes you run into a dead end when researching. I thought, well, maybe Wikipedia would give me something about the employment and who the employers are in Post Falls. No update since 2009. I wouldn't actually trust that information or that data. And I put that on there just to let you know, you got to really do a little bit of screening for the information that you receive. But Post Falls has a very active Chamber of Commerce that sponsors itself a leadership academy and a business and education committee. And each of those has contact information. The Chamber of Commerce also has a pretty open business directory with a list of all the businesses that are part of it with, again, contact information. I call that a winner when you're doing some research. Anytime you can get contact information is a good time. Scrolling through using Google Maps, I was actually able to see the layout of Post Falls, and I could get a sense of which businesses were close to each other. It looked like the major employers in Post Falls are hospitals, school districts, not huge businesses. Nothing popped out that was more than about 300 people, and of those, some of them were manufacturing. If I were really to go into Post Falls, I would probably start with maybe the government, maybe the Economic Development Department, the Chamber of Commerce, places that already serve through a post-secondary education type service. But to really find out more about the businesses, if you look at the Google Maps and you hone in on a specific business, not only can you see their building, but they typically will have contact information and any active social media sites. So this gets me to my second aspect of know your audience. You have to know the context in which you're operating. You have to kind of qualify the business, do your research, get your contact information. You have to also know what it is that they're looking for. How do their core values align with Toastmasters? Do they talk about them at all? Do they have a staff such that it would be a core concentration of people that would qualify them to be able to maintain a healthy club? If not that, are there a cluster of businesses nearby that might work? Who are their leaders? What communications and leadership skills do they need? I say that I worked for government most of my career. I knew really well what government needed for communication and leadership skills. We needed staff that were making presentations that were formal presentations in the community. They needed that formal presentation skill. There are other places where staff might need more of the impromptu customer service, customer response skills. So if you're visiting those kinds of calls, you might want to emphasize more the value of Toastmasters in impromptu speaking, or how well we do with listening skills. Do they offer any current professional development? If so, what? My organization spent about $300,000 over the course of a couple of years on some professional leadership development. And when I looked at their curriculum, everything could have been covered by Toastmasters at a much more reasonable price. So what do they offer for professional and personal development for their staff? Anything? Because Toastmasters is such a low-cost alternative. Is there anything in the news about them that might trigger you? Are they planning to grow? Are they downsizing? Have they won any awards? If so, what for? Was there an employee? Do they do any employee recognition that makes it into the news? All of that's bits of information that you can use before you ever set anything up for a visit to them. Now, clearly, I'm more talking about some business opportunities for clubs. But the same thing could apply to the community. When I was looking at Post Falls, Idaho, I noticed they had a lot of promotion of the kinds of interests in recreation. So maybe there's a specialty club that could focus on gardening water sports, hiking. You never know. That's the kind of bit of information that you might collect along the way. The other aspect of know your audience I mentioned was the leadership opportunities. Forbes, one article I picked up from 2022 said, here are our top skills we think leaders should know. Recognize any of those as something that's similar that we pick up from Toastmasters? Motivating others, building teams, authenticity, giving and receiving feedback. If you know what they're looking for, you have a much better chance at succeeding when you make a cold call. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you, Mary. Next up on our panel is Jim Coley. Past International Director Jim Coley has also served as a Region Advisor for Regions 5 and 2. During his time as Region Advisor, he developed a script, a YouTube video, and other resources to help districts perform cold calls. Today, Jim is going to give you a whirlwind introduction to some of the resources he and others have developed to facilitate doing cold calls. Please help me welcome Jim as he presents Connecting with Cold Calls.
Thank you, Madam District Director. Can you confirm that I'm well centered on my phone? Looks like it.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. First of all, I have to mention it's a delight talking with all of you today, and I want for this to be a conversation. So when we get to the Q&A part of the panel, I look forward to your thoughts. I also need to mention ahead of time that this presentation was originally put together for 45 to 60-minute format. And I don't want for anyone to feel disappointed because they don't talk about the feature benefit value chart, for example, just because there's a lot of other material to cover. And that is in this deck, but it's a hidden slide, which I'll share with Karen afterwards. I also need to acknowledge input that went into this overall deck from Monique Levesque-Farrow. Some of you probably know her, Elizabeth Nostad, and Linda Williams. Every one of them a distinguished Toastmaster, and some of them past international directors. So let's get started. We're going to talk about a number of things today. Identifying corporate leads. Mary Morrison gave a great perspective on all that, and I'm not going to spend too much more time talking about it. I do want to mention one or two additional things to consider, but building upon what Mary said. I'm going to talk about knowing your script, and that's not going to be super deep either, but in the interest of time, speaking of which, I'm going to stun myself in 5 minutes with my Fitbit to just make sure I don't go over. How to get ready for making those cold calls. The loop itself of working through your contacts, capturing information, modifying the script and repeating, and then cooling down. Meaning that you might want to take a breath between calls just to refocus, think about what the next call is going to be like, examine your notes for the company, etc. Corporate leads. Mary gave a great perspective on how to research corporate leads. Knowing your audience is super important. As you identify those leads, you want to have some way of tracking them, capturing the information about that company. I suggest using a spreadsheet or some shareable format because you might want to hand this off to another area director or your division director, or possibly your club growth director, to demonstrate what the status is of any of these calls, including don't call us back again, but also those ones where you have callbacks expected, and then just make sure that you're able to follow up with them. So you'll need some kind of tracking mechanism for sure. You also want to make sure that you consider the possibility that you'll be leaving voicemail. So you want to have a script that starts you off on the interactive part of a conversation, but you'll need to have comments when you need to leave a voicemail. You need to make sure that you cover the basics about who you are, why you're calling, and a pillar statement. Before you call, you will want to make sure you read through a script, and I'll provide this to Karen. And when I say I'm providing a script, what I'm really providing is a seed. You will want to take that script, make it your own, use words that are natural for you, use conversational mechanisms that are natural for you. Read through it, modify it, make it something you're very comfortable with in terms of how you present yourself and how you present Toastmasters. The reason that you want to have a script is because if you have any anxiety about the phone call, if you're nervous about it, if it's the first time doing cold calls, you might go off script and then realize that you're not presenting a uniform presentation. You're not connecting with all the information you wanted ahead of time. So the script is important to help you stay on track for the information you want to convey. Note that the script is there just to make sure that you get some important things out in your opening lines. But after that, you want it to be a logical discourse. You don't want to control the narrative. You want to say, hi, I'm here from Toastmasters, and I'll give you a very short version of this. My name is so-and-so. I'd like to find out if you're interested in starting a Toastmasters club. They might say, what is a Toastmasters club? And then you can take it from there and talk about how Toastmasters clubs are self-managed organizations, potentially self-sponsoring, or the company can sponsor if they like, to help their employees achieve better communication and leadership skills. But you'll get an opportunity to take a look at that script and make it your own. When you call, be ready. Have that script ready for you. Make sure you've got it internalized as much as possible. I will mention having that feature benefit value chart handy, because you might have some questions where it's good to have internalized some of this, and you might not be sure exactly what words connect directly with your audience on the other side of the phone. So I do recommend having that handy. And in the version of this presentation that you'll get, if you're not familiar with this chart, there is a link on one of the hidden slides here. So you'll be able to go in there as a resource, pull that down, have it ready along with your script. You'll also want to make sure that you have your calendar open, because it's quite possible that if you have a live conversation and it goes somewhere meaningful, they will want to have an appointment with you to talk more about it in person. At that point, you'll want to bring information about Toastmasters. You might want to bring other representatives, but make sure that however many people you bring, it doesn't appear like it's a 10 against 1 conversation, and manage it like you would any kind of conversation that you would feel comfortable with if you were on the other side of the table. Also have your tracker open and take notes as needed. And you can even say to the person, wait a moment, I need to take a note about this particular thing. If this company has a specific need, if they have specific questions that they want to ask you about, and you're not sure about the answer, it's better to take a note and get back to them with an honest, transparent kind of response. When you start the call, and this is an approach that I took probably in 2014, ask for a manager in HR, ask for a manager in education and training. Companies might be organized differently, and some of the research you may have done following Mary's advice or even doing additional work to investigate the company, you might have an idea already about how they're structured and whether or not you should be talking to an HR manager or training manager. Not unusual for them to be separate departments, and it's not unusual for training to be part of the HR program. Respond to any questions that the person has, assuming you have a live conversation. If you don't, leave a voicemail that's meaningful, not too rushed. Leave your name, your contact information, why you're there, and I'll invite you to use a pillar statement, even though it might feel corny if you're not really comfortable representing Toastmasters as a brand. And again, this deck has pillar statements in it, and you'll get to look at them, experiment with them a little bit. They're on hidden slides because in the interest of time, my stun mode just went off, so I know I've got 5 minutes already. After your call, this is also important because during the call, you might find yourself stumbling over words, whether it's something that's in the script or something that you felt like you could have managed better. You should feel free to update these scripts, fit it to your style, your mode of interpersonal communication, etc. And if you have a partner working with you, if you're taking turns, learn from each other. When you cool down and take a breath, you can have a good laugh about an uncomfortable situation, which I think will defuse a lot of potential anxiety you might have about making these calls. I didn't do a deep dive on this part of doing cold calls. It's going to be very difficult for some people, possibly you, to call up someone, especially if you're accustomed to the idea of thinking about telemarketers as people who should have a better life and better life choices. You are not a telemarketer when you're calling these HR people and these training managers. You are helping them do their job, and they will recognize that. When you call them up, they are looking for self-managed programs for their employees to improve their communication and leadership skills. Toastmasters is a perfect kind of solution for that. So they should want this kind of program. They should look forward to this kind of engagement. It's very different from you getting an unsolicited phone call about vacuum cleaners, for example. So if you're worried about seeming like a telemarketer, it's important to understand you are not. This is a meaningful conversation, and it's really a good opportunity for everyone involved. And finally, this is my closing slide. That's it for me. We'll talk more during the Q&A, I'm absolutely certain. And as I said before, I'll share this deck as well as starting scripts and a starter tracker spreadsheet with Karen Mobley. Sorry, I know someone named Marianne Mobley. With Karen Mobley after the call, so she'll be able to send it out to everyone. And if you have questions right off the cuff, we'll get to that in Q&A in a moment. Thank you. Back to you, Madam District Director.
Thank you, Jim. And our final panelist this morning, is Beth Ramsey. She is our current region advisor. Beth has enjoyed a 20-year career as a speaker and trainer for corporations and not-for-profit organizations. Her specialties are behavior and work styles to ensure team success and leading groups through strategic planning, 2 hours or less, guaranteed. She is currently serving as the Region 1 advisor and is a past district director of District 84, which is central to North Florida. Today, Beth will share a few tips on how to ban the bore at your next demo meeting. Demo meetings that actually work. Help me welcome Beth Ramsey.
Yay! Thank you, Miss Karen. All right, everybody. You took Mary's advice and you did all the research and you knew who to go after, and you are doing what Jim has advised with the wonderful script and everything, and you are ready for a demo meeting, so don't screw it up now. That's all I'm saying. But the first thing we need to do is to just agree on what a demo meeting is. I have, and I'm sure that you have, been invited or been involved in 1 or 2 demo meetings in your Toastmasters career. I have seen some smooth skating, and I have seen some train wrecks. And so I'm going to share with you what a demo meeting is. All right. It allows attendees to experience a meeting firsthand, and then hopefully to identify the skills that they can develop and the benefits that they may receive from joining the club. That's what it is. All right. There are different ways to accomplish this, and we have seen different ways. And after being invited and involved in many, I'm sharing with you what I think are the best practices. Ready? Here we go. All right. This may sound like a no-brainer. Trust me, to be successful, this event should be planned out in advance. You want to meet with those who are helping you on your team to make this a seamless and positive event. And there are differing opinions on how long a demo meeting should be. I have personally seen 45 minutes, 90 minutes. I languished in one that was 2 hours. I thought I would kill somebody, and I'm a Toastmaster. I get it. And that was way too long. So my preference is 60. I know I see the reactions there. I know that was mine. I'm like, really? My preference is 60 to 75 minutes. So that's an hour to hour 15. And here's how a suggested way to break it down. 10 minutes for guests to arrive, greet them, get them settled in. 35 to 40 minutes for the meeting, 5 minutes for feedback from guests, 5 minutes for benefits. Somebody who is passionate needs to be the one doing that close about what are the benefits, what's in it for them. Why are they going to exchange their time and their few dollars in exchange for being in this club? What's in it for them? We have to be able to do that. And then 15 minutes of guiding guests of what's next. So if you are doing a demo meeting, I want you to always have in your head, what's next, what's next, what's next? Because if you have been ever in an environment that you are new to, you kind of stand there, you don't know where to go, who to talk to, what to do. You, as a wonderful host and hostess, must tell them every step. And I would suggest you do one at a time. Don't tell them, well, we're going to have you come over here, we're going to have you do an application, then we're going to have you do a check, and then we're going to have you go talk to Sally, because that, no. one thing at a time so that they don't feel overwhelmed. Now, I have 2 little tips here for you. Please write these down somewhere or put them in your brain. Consider setting an unusual start time, 7:07. 7:07 p.m. That will make people do the Scooby-Doo thing. You know, they'll go, why did you do that? Then the other tip is, please be sure not to talk in acronyms. They don't know what a DTM, VC4, PM3. They don't know what those things are. So say the words out, explain what is going on. All right, here we go. It's time for the event to start. You have 1 shot at a first impression. 1. That's it. Once the impression's gone, and it takes what? 2 seconds? 3 seconds? I mean, how fast can we size something up, right? Don't let your guests catch you scurrying around like little squirrels. You need to be set up and ready to go at least 10 minutes before those guests arrive. You know, it's like showing up for the date and your date's not ready and you have to wait. And it just looks bad. That is not what we want to share with people. You need to have greeters on the door, at least 1, if not 2, and do not choose somebody who's grumpy. You want the nice, outgoing, fun, hey, we're so glad, bubbly people. That's what you want. And always have a handoff. So you could have 2 or 3 experienced Toastmasters who are at the ready, that when they see somebody being greeted at the door, they come up, and that means the greeter can say, you know, have you met John? John, please take our guest in. And so you see how it's a handoff where there's a guest that's never off by themselves. And you also want to have your seasoned members ready to do whatever, you know, that to introduce them to other people, to keep moving them. If you have refreshments, let's go to the refreshment table as well. Help yourself. And then I'm sure, hopefully, we've all heard of that really cool thing about the postcards for table topics. If you have not, let me share with you. Someone needs to be in charge of sending or giving out little postcards. And the question is something simple like, what is something really interesting that most people don't know about you? Or it could be something, what are you exceptionally proud of? Whatever question you want. And then that person who's in charge of giving out postcards to everybody, not just the guests, everybody, then they are the ones who take the postcards back and put a secret G for guest and a secret DTM in the corner, because you're going to use that later in table topics. Trust me. Okay. Now I will share with you here really quick. This is an agenda. I'm putting I'm going to put this link in the chat. That is the Toastmasters agenda for a demo meeting. I'm going to share that with you. Okay, so let's just agree this. A short demo, it is a taste. It is not War and Peace. I can't stress that enough. It is not War and Peace. It's a taste, okay? And so my suggestion would be to have 2, no more than 3 speakers. I would even suggest short, 2 to 3 minutes, 4 to 6 minutes, and then you could have brief evaluations for the guests to get a concept of why this is part of a standard meeting agenda. And then also with the grammarian. Now, caution, and on my notes, I have got asterisks all around these 2 things. A brief, whoever your evaluators are and whoever your grammarian is, you will, everybody raise your right hand and swear to me, you will meet with these people and explain to them that these are guests and you are not going to be doing a harsh grammarian report that goes into every little detail about how you did this, that, and the other wrong, because these people will run off screaming into the streets. And that's not what we want. We want them to stay. Soft, just a reason why we do this, so that we can gain better skills and become stronger speakers. Okay, now, index cards, table topic time. This is so much fun. I suggest the table topic master have the cards. Search for the little TMs in the corner. And the first 2 people who get up and speak are Toastmasters. They set the groundwork. That gives the guests an idea of what is going on. What are you supposed to do? Then your table topics master, guest, 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 guest. And what's going to happen is people will get up. They're talking about something they wrote down they already know, and they feel comfortable, and they will see that they did not die. Okay, talking in front of people. You're still living. How exciting that is. So that's wonderful. The other thing too is please, 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 please have energy in your demo meeting. If we're all going to do this, then nobody is going to want to join this, because why would I do this when I can get this at work, right? So we need to have joy and energy and how much fun this is. And then my other suggestion is, after all of that, you have 2 or 3 Toastmasters share a compelling story, table topic size, short, a compelling story about how Toastmasters has changed their life or positively impacted their life. They've done better at work. They got a promotion. I mean, there's a million stories like that, but I wouldn't do any more than just 2 or 3, because then we become desperate and we talk past the close. All right. Now, in closing with people, you've been giving, somebody needs to be really good at this, energy and oomph. Give the benefits. And Jim already told you about the benefit statement that we have. Give the benefits. And when you're talking to a corporation, I suggest that you avoid using the word club. I think we've talked about this kind of here and there. Do not describe Toastmasters as a club. It is a leadership development program. It is a skills development program, because that will make that cold call that Jim was talking about to HR so much easier. Man, we have a self-directed leadership and skills development program that would knock your socks off. Oh, yeah, tell me more. Okay, that's what you want, right? There you go. So when you are also, I love this, there's 6 words to grow the club, and the 6 words are, and don't forget to ask this, so many people are afraid to ask this, we'd love you to join us. That's 6 words. If you've ever been anywhere and they never asked you to join, they never asked you to come back, how do you feel, right? So we'd love for you to join us, and then you tell them where to go. Well, we got some Q&A in there. Give them a chance to answer questions. Ask their questions, and then tell them what to do next. Go see Linda, John, and Sally at the table over there, and they can answer more questions if you have. If you're ready to join us, they can help you with that too. And then I'm going to, last thing here, share a checklist with you that I found somewhere, which I thought, oh, this is kind of cool. I like this. So there's a little checklist that may help you get started and be organized in what you're doing. Yes, you can do this. I'm excited. Back to you, Madam District Director.
Excellent. Thank you, Beth. Next up, we are moving to our Q&A session, and we will go until 5 before the hour. So I'm going to open up the floor to everyone for questions, and you can address them to any one of our panelists, or if you prefer, you can have all the panelists take turns answering. Who would like to ask the first question this morning? Yes, Sean, please.
Thank you, Karen. Sean Ihilzer, Division A Director. I'll open this question to any of our panel. What is the best way to motivate members to want to participate in a demo meeting? I'll preface this by saying, to me, it's almost been like pulling teeth to try to get people, because they are mostly introverts. They have a fear of speaking beyond the club. Yet we have some great Toastmasters that would be good at doing it. Thank you. Oops.
Go, Jim. Jump in.
Okay. Different districts handle this different ways. District 57, and I don't think they're alone in doing this, used to have a demo meeting team, and they would travel and do these demo meetings. So they had people who volunteered at the DEC level to do these demonstration meetings. Other districts might do it differently. It's not unusual if you're trying to set up a demo meeting, it's not unusual to think about someone who is well-liked and super popular in the district doing the recruiting, someone who is a sparkler, someone who is planning to be there at this demo meeting, and for whom other people find it difficult to say no, and not because of some weird charisma, but because they enjoy very much working with this person. So if you can organize it, I suggest creating something that's kind of a structured approach. You might have demo meetings by division, or demo teams, by division, or demo teams that are district-wide, depending upon how convenient it is and whether or not it's virtual. But I think the important thing here is to not start off by issuing a request for volunteers, but starting with the recruiting process. People in general are also very, I think, more receptive to being recruited than they are to being asked to volunteer. If you ask someone, say, you're a really good Toastmaster, are you able to help us out with this demo meeting, blah, blah, blah. And they'll find it difficult to say no, as long as it's not a huge imposition, they have nothing else going on. So that's my advice.
I'll add some. I think sometimes people get overwhelmed with demo meeting. Oh gosh, why do I have to organize? Don't do just, and especially if you have a shy person, and I could say, Sean, you know what? We're having a demonstration meeting, and I really need your help. I find those words, I need your help, people kind of tune in, and then just say, I would love for you to handle the index cards and give one to every single person that comes in. Why would you say no to that? I just gave you one specific task, and it's not overwhelming. Now, when you get there, the story might be, and then you have to, just do bending. But I don't know if that helps any or not. But sometimes people are overwhelmed by the big ask, and they just, here's a task. If I could get you to do those.
Very good. Mary, do you have anything that you'd like to add? All right, then we'll move on to our next question. Who would like to ask our next question of our panelists? What? No one has any questions? Then why aren't we out there doing demo meetings and bringing the clubs all over the place?
Jacob is finding his socks.
Indeed. Jackie and then Nancy.
Thank you. Thank you, panel, for the great discussion. A question to Mary. I was a member of the Post Falls Toastmasters Club for quite some time. That's where I started out, and I don't know if that's where Nancy was going with this. And that club dissolved. So there was a Toastmasters Club in Post Falls, and you're right, it's a great place to have a club. And we tried to move the club even to Rathdrum with some demo meetings and lots of different things. And so, Mary, what might be a help for someone to reinstate a club in a particular area?
Well, I'm also going to turn any potential responses also back to Jim and Beth, who could have some experience too. I was thinking about this the other day when I was part of a club for more than 20 years that's no longer in existence. I believe that the organization would still support a club there. So I thought, I know a couple of people that were part of it that by the time the club folded weren't. We're no longer active participants, but they certainly saw the value and the benefits. So my plan is to get hold of them and say, do you see what potential interest do you see within this organization? Like it's like a warm call at that point. They've got the experience. I don't need to convince them of the benefits of Toastmasters. But if you live in Post Falls, or people in Post Falls, or businesses in Post Falls, have a different conversation with them. Under what circumstances could you see a professional development opportunity working for your organization, especially if you know them? See if you could arrange a coffee with them, or whatever kind of meeting might work for them. But to be able to say more of a warm call. Let's chat about this and the opportunities that you might have in your organization.
Great, thank you. Jim, please.
A quick question. Was the Post Falls Club a community club or a corporate club?
During the time I was there, it was a community club.
Okay.
And when I started, there was quite a few members, probably maybe 20 or so. And then by the time I was finished, or by the time I had moved my membership on to somewhere else, probably they were down to like 4 or 5. And so Mary's evaluation of under what circumstances might this continue is a great little term. I love that. Go ahead, Jim. Do you have some more?
Yeah, I have some thoughts, and I know that you all don't know me very well yet. Mary knows me pretty well. In a situation like this, I also want to make sure that if there's a possibility to understand if there are any contributing factors to the club's demise, understand what those factors might have been. If there was a toxic member who was trying to rule the club like a little kingdom, that could have been a problem. And yes, it happens, Jacob. Say it isn't true, it's true. So things like that could have contributed to the club's demise. If it folded because of COVID, that is it's an issue. Community clubs really thrive based on, I think, strong social bonds within that club. So if the club folded, there had to be some other explanation for it. Either something went sour, or there was a bad representation, or maybe bad leadership at the club level. And it might be worth, as Mary said, touching base with the people who were in the club before and seeing if they're interested in it, and not just for the personal improvement piece of it. And I wouldn't, present it up front like, wouldn't you like to see your old friends? Because that suggests it's just a social club. But keep that in the back of your mind when you're having those conversations, that those social bonds were there before, and they were probably a strong part of what held that club together to begin with.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Beth, anything to add?
No, not to that, but I do have just one other little tip thing. I know because I used to be like this. I mean, y'all won't believe, but I used to be like shy, and I used to be a doormat. People do not believe me who have just met me now. I swear I did. I would be so scared to ask anybody for anything. Anything. Just, could you give me a glass of water, honey? I mean, it's like that kind of thing. I didn't want to do that. But I think what people were so reluctant to ask for the close, ask for people to join us, or ask, please, because they don't want to be turned down, and that hurts. Anytime anybody says no, well, that hurts, right? But if you go into it with, and this is what helped me turn the corner, and I want to share that what helped me was, my job isn't to get the yes. My job is to move them to a decision. My job is to move them to a decision. I want it to be yes, but you're going to get one of three answers: yes, no, or not right now. That's it. So that really made me go, oh, okay, well, it's not that bad. So I'm not a failure if I don't get a yes. I'm not, no, you're moving people to a decision, and you're giving them information and opportunity. And they may come back later because they'll think about all the goodness that you shared.
Excellent. Thank you, Beth. Next up for questions is Nancy.
Well, I want to mention this panel is extremely timely for me on work I'm doing. In our Division C, we've just heard that Itron, one of our corporate clubs, has decided to close. And it's because their workforce has primarily gone hybrid. And so they are spending less time in the office and more time online, and they can't seem to generate the people joining there. You're shaking your heads like, yeah, that's kind of a common thing going on. The other piece is that I'm working on a marketing campaign to the local radio, all the media outlets, to be able to do PSA announcements. And I wanted to be able to kind of do cold calls with those at the same time. And so I wanted to ask, okay, knowing that there's places that are definitely hybrid, what is the best way to approach those?
Which of our panelists would like to jump in on that one first? Jim, go ahead.
I have opinions on everything, so you'll just have to shut me up if you get tired of hearing about it. During COVID, one of the interesting things about the Toastmasters virtual experience was that it really solidified the need to be conversant with this kind of technology and communicate effectively this way. And not just communicate, but influence, whether that's communication or additional kinds of considerations. So it should have been a strong selling point during COVID for Toastmasters hybrid experiences to help employees deal with virtual kinds of experiences. However, I think that didn't happen for whatever reason. The other thing that was kind of interesting from a virtual collaboration perspective is that, especially with community clubs and even with corporate clubs and even with corporate meetings, whether it's Toastmasters or not, there's a strong tendency now to use this virtual channel, not just for, here's my business presentation, there'll be no questions at the end and click, you're out of there. There are warm-up conversations, so there's a certain amount of socialization of the experience before the meeting gets started and after meeting concludes, even sharing of social comments and emojis during the course of the meeting. So from a Toastmasters perspective, this is a nice opportunity if a large portion of the workforce is meeting virtually, this kind of experience feels like it should fit right into their schedule with technology that they're probably interested in using in more and interesting ways. So for me, it seems like it should work out very well and very logically. But treat that not as a certainty because we know that it isn't.
Very good. Mary or Beth?
And it's just about like hybrid and things like that. And this may not be popular. I think we're getting lazy. It's super easy. Yeah, see, every time I bring that up, I'm getting these, okay? People are craving to be in person again. They're going crazy and they really are wanting to be back in person. So I think that we're moving that direction, and hybrid's a great stepping point to do that. The challenge with that is making sure there are people in the room as well as online. And then I have just recently had a club say, well, we did it that way for a while, but then it got to be there were more people in the room and nobody was online anymore. So they stopped that. But the magic happens when we're together. My personal opinion.
And Nancy, the thing I would add, I don't know Itron. I do know that when our membership started to falter at work, a well-timed communication or meeting with a manager who often was not a Toastmaster but knew that they had people that worked for them that were a well-timed meeting with them or communication with them, which could include their employees, to say, here's what we believe are the benefits of Toastmasters right now. It could be the opportunity to connect internationally. It could be the opportunity to really learn how to manage meetings that are online or that are hybrid. It could be how to build teamwork and pull people together. So there's different aspects of it that I would try to suss out in a club that you think could have possibilities, but they may not be thinking of the kind of problems that Toastmasters could solve for them. That's what you bring to them because Toastmasters. So you figuring out what about their business could still fit. It's kind of like going back to that original research thing. It may not work. I don't know, but it's probably worth a bit more research on your part. And there may be a couple of employees who could give you great insight into what's happening in their organization. And I agree with Beth. Don't fall for we don't have time. Like, if you had time, would you do it? Yeah.
Well, that's true. It's like people say, well, I don't have time. Well, or I don't have the money or whatever. Well, we seem to find time and find the money for things we think are valuable. So when I hear that I don't have time, I hear, okay, where did I miss connecting the benefits? I missed that somewhere, or where is it?
Excellent. Thank you. Next up on questions, Ed, you had your hand raised.
There we go. I'm very frustrated. I'm currently Division D director. I've been in Toastmasters since 1980. And this is the first time I have encountered a division, or at least an area, that is just totally unresponsive as far as anything. I have made phone calls. I have made emails. I've sent the email and say, please acknowledge receipt. I don't even get that back. That's when I usually make a phone call and say, it's like today was the day, or yesterday was the day I asked to have responses on, did anybody hold a club contest? Because I'm acting as an area director as well, because we couldn't get an area director in one of our areas. So I'm doing that, and the people are just not responding. And it's very frustrating. And like I said, I've been a Toastmaster since 1980, and this is the first time I've encountered this. What's the deal?
Let me answer real quick because I have to jump away. I'm a judge in an area contest that gavels down in 4 minutes. So I think that, first of all, we have lost social skills, and it's a generational thing. And we grew up, most of us grew up with our mother taught us, you always RSVP. That's not taught anymore. And unfortunately, that's a challenge. And for this next Toastmaster year, I am going to be a division director because we need division directors in my own district. And one of those things that I like to do is set up a meeting in advance with whoever my team is going to be about what are our expectations, how are we going to treat one another, what is going to be our communication style, and then kind of set up the rules for the year. I don't know if that helped. I mean, it's a little late now, but it is frustrating, and I totally get you, Ed. It is really annoying because you're trying to move forward, and maybe they don't see what it is you're trying to accomplish. Because if their piece of the pie is only this big and your piece of the pie is this big, they might not see it. They don't understand why this is important. Yeah, I'll get to you later. But other than that, I love you all. Thank you, Karen and Mary and Jim, for allowing me to be part of you all. And thank you all.
Thank you, Beth. All right, Jim or Mary, do you have anything that might be helpful for Ed's situation? Please, Jim.
Maybe. One of the struggles that we have in Toastmasters is that we're a volunteer organization. So it's sometimes very difficult to manage a uniform set of expectations with respect to our volunteers in leadership positions. If you have not had the conversation that Beth already suggested regarding what the expectation should be regarding communications in 24 hours or 48 hours responses or things like that, it still might be useful. And I don't know if you've already done this, Ed, so help me out here. If what you've done is sent an email out to all of the area directors saying, when are your area contests? And, please use these forms to report back to me so I know who the winners are. If that was the approach, you might find it better to send individual emails to the area directors and say, hey, Bob, I really need your response on this. Please let me know when your area contest is. And afterwards, please use this form to let me know who the winners are, for example. Is part of the issue maybe that you're sending it out to everybody and they're not feeling like they're individuals, perhaps, or they don't understand that you really have a need and they're not fulfilling it?
No, actually, it's not. We only have 2 areas in Division D, and I have one individual that is the area director for D2. But what I try to do is, if I send something out, I'll send out blind copy to each one of the club presidents and VPEs. I'll send so that they get those individually per club. And after that, and again, in bold, in yellow, not all capitalized, just in bold and just answer this question, etc. So.
Aha. So I applaud you for not using all capital letters and exclamation points, because rarely does that ever prove to be effective. And in fact, it might create more problems than it fixes.
Oh, it's effective. It's effective in saying, I'm not going to talk to you. You're going to yell at me? No. I learned that lesson a long time ago.
Might be effective in the military, but not with volunteer leaders for sure.
No. I had 26 years in the Air Force.
So you're aware. The other thing you
Yes.
can try doing is experimenting with your styles of influence. This is a space early on in the call, before I think most people joined, we spoke about the adventure that area directors are departing upon the first time trying to influence people outside of their club. And part of the reason that's uncomfortable is because they have to deal with the situation you're describing, although it's kind of at a different level. That is, they're expected to influence these club leaders who might have clubs that you would not choose to join, and they have their own expectations for how they choose to be influenced. You might want to see if you can have a conversation with this area director to figure out what it is they need to hear from you in order for you to have a more responsive kind of relationship with them. I don't think this is one of those things where here's a 9mm gun and it'll solve all your problems, but there might be other things you can try. I suggest experimenting with it and really don't look at this as an insoluble problem, but if the problem you're trying to solve is you're not able to influence them, figure out what works for them and have that conversation and probe a little bit and pull other people in if you think it'll help. That might also help that other individual feel like they need to be more responsive, and they might feel like they need to work with you more to figure out whatever that mechanism needs to be.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, we've got time for just one more question. If everyone has anything that they would like to ask. Jacob?
One thing I wanted to ask, especially now that Beth is gone, we're planning on doing a demo meeting for a certain club. And for this club, we do a hybrid style meeting and we get great feedback on it. And it is out of PNNL. For some people, they work from home and it's just not time efficient for them to come all the way out to the lab if they can just work at home. And other people, don't quote me on this, they just have to stay in their certain area of the lab. So if we're going to do a demo meeting, I think we should do it with Teams as hybrid. Is there any advice for that? Should we have one member, a dedicated, all be online that day to answer questions for online guests? Any advice for a hybrid demo meeting?
One of the most effective uses of hybrid I've seen is to start up front a little differently. So rather, when you kind of call the meeting to order, the first thing you do is get people involved and engaged in a conversation with kind of a warm-up question that they could all relate to. And it could be, like, often it's related to a theme of the meeting that we might have. Tell us about a leader you really admired. You put the people on Zoom into breakouts of 2 to 3, and the people in the room can have the conversation. Then come back and have groups just give somebody's leading them through a mini response thing. But it allows people, rather than jumping right into the formality of the meeting, to connect right away in a way that makes them feel they're part of it. And then they're not waiting for X period of time to be able to participate. It's one of the ways we've adapted to more of the hybrid and Zoom meetings.
Excellent. Thank you, Mary. Jim, anything to add?
I have a question back to Jacob. Are you perceiving that there's a special barrier? I think you mentioned a few things like people want to stay in their location in the lab. And I'm assuming that in a case like that, you're still able to access Teams and they're comfortable and familiar with the Teams experience. Can you confirm that?
Yeah, well, I feel like our hybrid meetings go real smooth. Karen was just a visitor on Teams and she had a wonderful time.
Okay. And from your perspective, what challenges do you think you would have doing a demo meeting with Teams?
Just well, for one, I feel like we probably should have one dedicated member. We actually have a member who lives in Prosser, so he's always online. Just to have somebody online who, if someone puts a comment in the chat and has a question, they can have an answer, because sometimes we just do not see the chat, or we don't have people talking over each other. Like, that's one thing I'm thinking about. And just so there's somebody from the club online, so it's not like everybody who's online is guests.
Sure.
So there is somebody from Lab Oratories who's online, who's knowledgeable, who can greet them as soon as they're there.
Gotcha. So I think that's kind of in the space that Mary was thinking about, having someone whose job it is to really keep an eye on chat and be a chat monitor, respond to questions people have, and decide whether or not they want to do it publicly or DM to that individual, depending upon a perceived level of interest. I think that does make a lot of sense. In fact, there's a reasonable argument that Teams offers better capability of managing that aspect of a demo meeting than doing it in person, where it would be difficult for the person on that side of the room to ask an appointed responder a question. You can do it during the course of this meeting because of Teams, so it offers you an advantage there. But I do think that's a very reasonable accommodation for teams that you might not have in real life as part of a demo meeting, for sure.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I am going to bring our panel discussion to a close. A special, warm, and grateful thank you to Mary, Jim, and Beth for being with us today and sharing their knowledge and expertise. The files that Jim mentioned previously, I will have posted on the district website and let everyone know, so that way you can access it at your convenience. And if you don't mind, let's take a 5-minute comfort break and come back at, 12 after the hour, and we will go on with our reporting for the meeting. Please feel free to talk to our guests as you please. And Mary and Jim, you are both welcome to stay and participate in the rest of our meeting if it suits your schedules. 5 minutes, everyone.
Thanks, Karen.
I'm going to head out, but it was great meeting you all. I've dropped my contact information in the chat. If you have any feedback or questions or suggestions, please feel free to let me know. Absolutely welcome that.
Thanks, Jim.
Of course. Have a fantastic year.